Hi people, my name is Bart Reid, and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm gonna take a look at a movie that's been stuck in my head since childhood. Kinda like that piece of lead that's still lodged in your hand from when you got stabbed by a pencil in the first grade. Except for me, that piece of grade school shrapnel is the 1982 animated feature, The Flight of Dragons. We've all got those buried memories of weird movies we saw as kids. You know, the kind of stuff you can only half remember now, but that still gnaws at your subconscious for some reason. So I decided to rewatch the movie to figure out why it's been stuck with me for so damn long, and I realized that there is just some weird stuff going on here that I definitely didn't pick up on as a kid.
A mating dance, perhaps?
Really, Smurgle, at your age.
So, join me as I pry this 80s animated gem from obscurity and show you some purely bizarre things that are hard to wrap your noodle around.
I tell you, I smell strange dragon.
Alright, let's get into this.
You wanted dragons, my son. Dragons you shall have.
The movie opens and we see an old wizard standing on top of a mountain, with his arms stretched out like Scott Stapp in a Creed music video. He's screaming at a dragon out in the distance who's apparently called Gorbash.
Gorbash! Gorbash! Come!
Which is a name straight out of an Ozfest lineup. They must be friends because Grandpa jumps on Gorbash's back and they soar off into the sky, joining a huge flock of dragons who are flying south for the winter, I guess. Then the wizard starts into this narration that sets up the history of this magical realm, which is Earth, by the way. Apparently a very long time ago, dragons could just fly free through the sky like birds, but then people hit a crossroads where man had to choose between magic or science.
A world of magic or a world of science? Which will it be?
And that's a pretty difficult choice. You know, on the one hand, with magic, you could do cool stuff like be a slave to an evil wizard, and on the other hand, with science, you could maybe get an iPhone. Personally, I'd be torn. And as the dragons soar through the air, we go into the opening title sequence and theme song. I wish I could play the original recording for you, but that feels like an easy copyright strike, so I'll just let this guy do it. Or this guy.
Flight of dragons.
Or these two dudes.
Is it the past I see?
Or these people.
Living in the magic.
Or, you get it. Dorks love this song.
I want to go where they are going, into a world they've been. Can I open up my eyes enough to see?
Surprisingly, this original track hits pretty hard, so I looked into it, and it turns out that the song was written and performed by Don American Pie McLean. At first, I wondered how they got Don McLean to do this weird little movie's theme song, and even more so why he decided to go so hard on it. But then I took a closer look at the lyrics and realized that the song is just a thinly veiled metaphor for getting stoned. Which is true of any song about dragons, really.
You know, I can never get that spinny thing quite right. Something in the twirl, perhaps. Well, you're not an American football cheerleader. You're a great drummer, and everybody knows it. You really think so? Hey, guys. Oh, hey. Listen, I don't want to upset you delicate geniuses or anything, but we're gonna need another track for the album. Another track? Why? Because 3 songs ain't an album, blokes. The album's called the Holy Trinity. You can't have a trinity with 4. Well, I thought you guys were the Trinity. But there's only 2 of us. Well, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost is invisible, right? Look, it doesn't matter. We're gonna need another track for the album, or we're not gonna release it, okay? These Americans are so direct. So direct. Well, do you have any ideas for another song? Well, I don't know, maybe. I know you've got something in your noodle, mate. Oh, I have a brilliant idea. What if we sing a song about getting absolutely stoned? No, we can't possibly do that. Well, why not? Well, because they'll never let us play it on the radio, what with school children's impressionable minds and whatnot. Right, okay then. But what if we never said it was about getting completely stoned? Well, how can you write a song about getting stoned that's not about getting stoned? By making it a clever metaphor. Like, instead of it being about lighting up a big fatty, it was about a mythical creature or something. Well, like a medieval dragon? Right, so like when we sing about how high the dragon soars in the sky, people will know it's really about us who like to get high. On drugs. Alright, so like if we sing about the dragon's chest being filled with fire and smoke, that's really like us taking a huge bong rip then. Yeah, right, exactly. Alright, grab a pen. I've got some great ideas going. Well, I think I'm getting it. Sorry.
So how did Rankin and Bass come up with such a balls-trippy idea for a children's TV movie? Well, this is the same studio that did the animated Hobbit movie and Return of the King, so it's no surprise that The Flight of Dragons is also a fantasy book adaptation. However, what is surprising is how exactly they decided to adapt this particular book. The movie The Flight of Dragons is based on a book of the same name, and what's funny about this book is that it's less of a fantasy tale and more of a theoretical explanation for how dragons could have really existed.
Dragon fire, dragon flight, it all makes perfect sense. Oh!
But it gets even weirder because Peter Dickinson, the author of the book, is also the main character of the movie.
So, that is Peter Dickinson.
Who, in the movie, is trying to write the book on which the movie is based.
So I turned my back on it all and started on my book, The Flight of Dragons.
The Flight of Dragons. Yes, here it is. The Flight of Dragons by Peter Dickinson.
But that's all while he's caught up in a plot that really revolves around fantasy, magic, and time travel. So it's kind of like adaptation meets Lord of the Rings meets Back to the Future. And if that isn't a setup for a perfect film, I don't know what is. So now we're back from the title sequence and we're at an old mill where the Green Wizard has decided to stop his dragon joyride to harass some poor mortal workers who are just trying to grind some wheat to make some bread for the town.
Be careful with your machines, I say. Your motors must not crowd out all magic.
So you just know this wizard's got to flex on these guys.
I am Carolinus, the Green Wizard.
And then he demands some respect, but the millers aren't giving it.
You're loony, you are. Get back to where you belong.
So naturally, he decides to ratchet up the situation like a million times and starts charging up a spell to magically flash fry these three innocent dudes. But he must have been feeling pretty weak because he blows a pretty unimpressive load on these three dudes and slinks home to wallow in the shame of his poor performance. Carolinus lives with his daughter, who has buns in her hair like Princess Leia and a singing voice like a fucking tea kettle. Why does he live alone with his daughter? Like, what happened to the mom? This seems kind of suspicious. You saw how he treated those mill workers. Maybe his wife talked back to him and he polymorphed her into a stool or plane shifted her to another dimension. I don't know, but one thing is clear. Don't ever marry a wizard, and if you do, don't argue with them.
Listen, Carolinus, when we invite a couple over, I expect you to be engaged in the conversation, like at least put some effort in. Don't just slink off back down to the basement after 30 minutes to go tinker on your spells by yourself. It's ridiculous. Look, wait,
Antiquity to give me magic enough.
what are you doing?
Zomanai lava, yes.
Are you serious?
Zomanai lavathol.
Was that gonna make me levitate 12 feet in the air?
Sacronis madly.
I dare you, man.
All the blazes. Color!
Hit me with it. Hit me with your best spell. Come on.
Finally, it's quiet. So then in busts this red dragon Smurgle, looking to mess stuff up after hearing what happened down at the old mill, but Carolinus has a better idea, which is to summon his three brothers to finally solve this technology problem once and for all. We got brother one, Solarius, who's the blue wizard of the ocean and outer space. And then we got brother two, Ludazal, the gold wizard of light and air and healing and transcendence and basically all the mystical shit. And well, let me stop right here. Okay, and then we got the last brother, kind of the black sheep of the family. His name is Omadon, and he's the wizard of the devil and darkness. Omadon RSVPs to his brother's gathering by lighting the invitation on fire, and then he gets up from his twisted throne that's flanked by two giant rodent beasts and cracks a whip to summon his evil dragon Briog. So, yeah. He's the bad guy. What's up with Omadon's body type, by the way? He's as thick as mashed potatoes, but then has arms as skinny as shoestring fries.
Oh my god.
It's gross, and I don't like it. Carolinus gets up on Gorbash and they fly away to meet the other wizards at the Temple of All Antiquity, which sounds like the kind of place your mom would want to stop on a road trip through Savannah, Georgia, but it's not that at all. It's a twisted and crumbling tower in the desert that looks more like a place where you'd cook meth and have your own United Nations of Wizards meeting. So Carolinus is kind of a shitty host, right? Like, he invites over his brothers who he hasn't seen in centuries and makes them meet on the teetering top floor of a dilapidated tower in the desert and then doesn't provide any drinks or snacks, like not even a veggie tray and a sixer? Pathetic, dude. Although, to be fair, Carolinus does look kind of off and demented most of the time. Like, his daughter should have put him in the old wizard's home a long time ago. You can't just be letting people that ancient have access to that kind of powerful magic. It'd be like giving your grandpa the nuclear launch codes. But we did kind of already do that, so never mind. The wizards get together to complain about how mankind is using technology to make their lives more comfortable and other nefarious things like increasing their life expectancy. Carolinus' solution is that he wants to build a wall around his magical realm to keep those dirty humans out.
Magnificent.
And the other wizards seem into this idea except for Omadon.
No, never. I will not concede defeat.
Omadon wants to take over the whole damn planet by making man use their own technology against themselves. So Omadon leaves to go do evil stuff, but not before revealing to his magic brothers his one true weakness.
By this red crown, source of all my dark power. Farewell!
Now, this is just me, but if I were about to engage my enemies in a protracted battle that may very well come down to life or death, the one thing I wouldn't do is tell them my weakness. Just saying.
Kyle, we don't have to do this. There's gotta be a way we can coexist. As long as you exist, Kyle, you'll never stop trying to foil my schemes. It's a tale as old as time. Good versus evil. And today, evil will reign supreme. But Kyle, we're just regular identical twins. This isn't a Bizarro universe sort of thing. I'm not the good one. You're not the evil one. You just grew a mustache and I didn't. Our differences run deeper than that, Kyle, and you know it. Now face me, and the power of my magic hat will destroy you. The source of all my strength and my one true weakness. What? Your magic hat? Yes, take my hat and I'm reduced to ashes. Now let's fight. But why would you tell me your only weakness right before we were about to fight? Because you could never possibly defeat me. No, no, no! He wasn't kidding.
The three good wizards are preparing to bring the hurt down on Omadon.
I will bring the fire of the meteors, the rage of the seven seas.
That seems like a fine idea to stop him, but apparently the forces of nature won't let the wizards get in an all-out magic battle with each other, so Harry Potter fans, I'm sorry. Instead, they decide on the only other logical plan, which is to put together a crack team of unlikely misfits. A knight, a dragon, and a nerd from the distant future of 1982. Peter Dickinson is just your average nerd from Boston who just wants to get his homemade fantasy board game on the shelves.
What do you think of this new Flight of Dragons game I invented?
It's fun.
Just a couple of $1,000, we can manufacture this, and we'll all be living like kings.
It's a shame Peter wasn't from a little further in the future, because then instead of having to sell his family's precious heirlooms to make his dreams come true, he could have just created a Kickstarter and annoyed all of his friends and family by begging them for money. So the Green Wizard then full-on time travels and abducts Peter from his weekly game session with the old pawnbroker to take him to the mythical past, all of which Peter seems perfectly fine with. It isn't until he sees a dragon that Peter really freaks out. Like, a wizard just came out of nowhere, shrunk you to the size of an action figure, took you to the past, and now you're falling through the air without a parachute. But it isn't until a dragon shows up that you get the slightest bit interested.
Son of a gun, a dragon! I'm actually seeing a dragon, a real dragon?
Although, I should say that Peter also seems very interested in the wizard's daughter, Princess Melisande, also.
My fairy princess. Oh, I made her everything I'd ever desired in a woman.
Night falls and Peter and the princess get a little alone time and are about to get it on when Omadon's evil dragon shows up to cock-block them. The idiot dragon Gorbash thinks he can help, so he flies after Peter while Carolinus is on the ground trying to remember a spell that could help, but he's fighting against an ancient wizard's greatest enemy. Alzheimer's disease. Carolinus ends up screwing up the spell and accidentally merges Peter's mind with Gorbash's body. So this has become a movie about a white man with a dragon fetish who gets his mind put into a dragon body. So basically the plot of Get Out, but with dragons instead of black people. Now Peter has to learn how to become a dragon, which turns out to be less like How to Train Your Dragon and more like Training Day, because the first thing the veteran dragon Smeargle does is teach Peter how to extort jewels from mountain dwarves by threatening to eat them alive.
Is this necessary?
To get gemstones, you rob dwarf mines. Come on out, you mealy-mouthed little runts. Bring gems.
Hurry now before we devour you.
Then Smeargle makes Peter take a huge hit of gemstones, which is apparently key to getting dragons high. I mean getting dragons to fly, but instead of just chilling and riding the gemstone high, Peter's just like bugging out and overthinking things, trying to figure out how dragons work, and it's just totally ruining the vibe.
No, that's not logical. How could my ribs contain fire?
Ah, shut up and eat your limestone.
The two fly off to meet up with Sir Orin Neville Smythe, who's basically an English stereotype wearing medieval bondage armor.
I hope there's time for a good hot cup of tea.
Smeargle goes to sleep, but Peter stays up to be regaled by Sir Orin with some nice backstory when suddenly they're attacked by a plague of rodents whose chirping makes everyone go crazy. Everyone's rolling around on the ground in pain trying to get rid of the sound that's stuck in their head, which is kind of like me after hearing certain TV commercial jingles for the 1000th time.
Take a bite of Bart and Sons, such a great pickle.
Yum, yum. Why do I have cable? Omadon's flying around, just loving this, feeling like he's got victory on lock, but fortunately for everyone, they're saved by this giant skunk wolf named Arak, who's, up until this point, just been chilling at the bottom of the ocean. So they go on their way in the morning, and everything's looking great now, except some sneaky little wood elves are spying on them, and they capture the dragons, attack Sir Orin, and drop a pile of boulders on Arak. These little dudes are mad as hell, but then the team is saved again by a stranger who's going to join the group. This time, a sexy redhead and all-around badass with a bow, Danielle.
Barry! Oh, that's holy!
Also, it turns out that these little elves aren't really that bad, and their leader Giles ends up joining the team, mainly motivated by the chance to hook up with Danielle, who's a total flirt.
Hurry now.
The team stops for the night at an inn and tavern that borders on Omadon's vast hellscape, and while they're sleeping off a pretty good drunk, they're attacked by an ogre.
Omadon has sent the ogre of Gormley Keep.
The only ones to make it through the attack alive, unharmed, or uncaptured are the dragons and the little guy Giles, who decides to hide in a pot of hot soup, which is an overall great idea. What could be smarter than turning yourself into the main protein of a stew for a giant ogre who probably would have eaten you raw, but now your meat's tenderized and you got a little seasoning on you? So the remaining team has to go rescue Sir Orin and Danielle from the ogre's dungeon. The plan's pretty simple. Peter, who's been a dragon for about 2 days now, has to go fight a battle-hardened ogre who's already survived losing an eye and a leg. Fighting through the stink of this guy alone is going to be hard enough for Peter, let alone trying to subdue him while he's standing on top of his castle with bones as thick as tree trunks, skin that's fireproof, and he's swinging around that little mace/ogre sex toy. Seriously, you know what he does with that thing. It's no wonder that Peter gets his crust absolutely busted, which then forces the old man dragon Smeargle to get involved in the fight, even though he just told Peter that he's too old for this shit.
I'd take him myself, but age has got to me.
Smeargle's got some moves, and he ends up defeating the ogre, but in the end he dies due to the massive blows he sustained during the fight.
What a grand way to finish a glorious life.
And Peter's got to be feeling like a real champ right now. They bury old Smeargle and just keep on going down to Omadon's castle, until they run into a giant worm in his slimy puddle made of acid. It's just really gross. Even Danielle, who I guess has had some experience with long, girthy worms, is totally out of her depth on this one.
Never saw one that big.
No one's really sure how to beat off this giant wriggling beast, except for Peter, who finally steps up to the plate and blows a fiery little kiss right down the worm's throat, causing him to prematurely burst into flames. His ogre's been chucked from the tower, his worm's been burned, and his spells are useless thanks to a magical shield, so it seems Omadon is left with few options. So Omadon hypes up his pal Briog and sends him off with a massive gang of dragons to go kill everybody. Calm calm down, dude. The party looks kind of completely screwed, so Peter asks the little guy Giles to play them some farewell music on his golden flute, but apparently the dragons are not very big fans of elf flute music and would rather fall out of the sky unconscious than hear him play for another second. Sadly for the team, Briog's partially deaf or something, so the music doesn't affect him at all, and he's just as excited to kill as ever.
He has blood on his mind and can take them all.
Puny scum of Carolinas, prepare to die!
Briog just messes everybody up. I'm talking straight up murdering Danielle, Giles, and Eric. They are way dead. Peter is still unconscious from the flute music, so it's up to Sir Orin to slay the dragon. He holds up his sword, and before he goes in for the kill, he gives his weapon one last blessing.
Blade with whom I have lived, blade with whom I now die, serve right and justice one last time, seek one last heart of evil, still one last life of pain. Cut well, old friend, and then farewell.
It's totally badass, and I wish moments like this happened more often.
Oh no. Roll with whom I've lived, square with whom I now shall wipe. Seek one last shart of evil. I'm sorry. This is just too gross to keep going. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sir Orin chucks his flaming sword at Briog, killing him, but not before being cooked alive in his armor by dragon breath.
I would have lived a life with thee, lassie. So now I die.
With everyone dead or incapacitated, Omadon beams himself down onto the battlefield to gloat in victory. But just as it looks like it's all over, out emerges Peter from Gorbash's body, back in his own skin and ready to fight again. But not with weapons or magic, no. This time, he's all spocked up and wielding the power of logic.
I guess logic is stronger than magic.
Stronger than my magic?
Omadon is pretty sick of shit at this point, so he unleashes his full power and grows 6 dragons out of his back. But Peter's undeterred, and he fights back, spitting straight facts at the wizard, smacking him with science.
Those incantations can't hurt me. I have some incantations of my own. How about a body in motion tends to stay in motion? The velocity of light is equal to the wavelength times the frequency of vibration.
I really hope that when this aired on TV in 1982, that the nerdy kids who watched it that evening weren't inspired to use the same tactics on their own bullies in school the next day, because, well...
What's up, nerd ass? Not much, fart breath. What'd you just call me? I called you fart breath. What are you gonna do about it? Do you like getting pounded or something? Go ahead and try. Well, if you're gonna ask for it. Newton's third law. Every action has an equal but opposite reaction. You should probably stop doing your homework and start running. A squared plus b squared equals c squared? Igneous rock is formed from the cooling of magma. Chlorophyll makes plants green. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Oh, God.
Peter goes on torturing this poor wizard by calling upon the punishing powers of the most difficult subjects in school.
Algebra, anatomy, astronomy, biology, chemistry, geology, geometry, mathematics, meteorology, mineralogy, oceanography, paleontology, physics, psychology, sociology, trigonometry, and zoology.
So Peter kills Omadon and takes his crown, and suddenly everything's back to normal again. The grass is green and no one's dead. Carolinus, the green wizard, flies over in a shack like Dorothy, and the other wizards beam themselves in too. Everyone's there, happy and smiling, except for Peter, who's gone back to his own time, but not before sneaking into the shack to kiss the princess, who's in a magic coma, completely unconscious. Real cool dude. He just went through this whole big thing about being a man of science in order to defeat this evil wizard and take his crown, but then he sneaks into the shack to kiss the unconscious princess like his magic mouth is somehow going to break her curse. I feel like Peter is pretty flexible with his beliefs as long as he's getting what he wants. So Peter zaps back to his own time, still right in the middle of playing his homemade board game with the old man, and you're almost beginning to think that maybe that whole adventure was just a fantasy or a dream, but then who walks in but Princess Melisande, and she just starts making out with Peter right in front of the old man. She left her homeland, gave up a life of magic, and renounced her royal entitlements just to be with some nerd who she only met for one night and who kissed her without her consent. I feel like she's gonna regret that choice when Peter tells her that she's gotta get a job because rent ain't cheap in Boston, and oh yeah, you're from a magical realm, so you don't even have a social security number, so have fun washing dishes in the back of an Applebee's and hiding in a meat locker whenever ICE busts in looking for illegals. But there's no time to see how that conversation plays out because we cut outside where Carolinus is flying on Gorbash over the city, which breaks his own rule of once you leave the magical realm, you're never allowed back in.
Go, and you may never return to the magic realm.
So I guess he's stuck having to live out the rest of his immortal life on modern Earth trying to hide a dragon from animal control. And that's how this weird movie ends. So this movie probably isn't the last murky memory that I'll pull out of my past to shine a light on, but what did I learn from dredging up this retro fantasy film? Well, I think this movie stuck with me because it sits at the intersection of fantasy and memory. What I mean is that as our old memories are weathered by time in our minds, the rough edges of our lives are rounded over into simple myths. Good versus evil, a knight versus a dragon. And when we're faced by complex choices in our present lives, we can turn back to our own personal myths to help guide us. Maybe that's why people are drawn to fantasy fiction. And also swords are cool. If there's an old movie stuck as a foggy memory in your mind and you'd like me to take a look at it, hit me with it in the comments below. And I'd like to thank all my subscribers for showing up to this video, and if you're not subscribed yet, please consider joining what we got going on here. Alright, you guys are great, now goodbye.